Ain't Sephiroth the one who's supposed to be the dark part of Cloud's heart?
You know, I should have some commentary on that to share, but right now, due to me being a big fan of the character's Japanese voice actor, I can't get this out of my head.
Did Cloud tell you that? Then he must understand now.
That I am me as you are we, and we are all together! I'm going to get off this tangent now before I just start repeating jokes from the Kyoryuger reviews ad nauseum.
Then I should give him what he wants. That last bit of light is always the hardest to snuff out.
Because the light in the darkness always shines brightest. So yeah, all of our allies start taking on the Horde. And hey, big fan service moment for Cloud and Squall to be fighting back to back, as at the time, they were the poster boys for Final Fantasy. That and Dissidia Final Fantasy hadn't ruined the idea yet with half-assed development thanks to Tetsuya Nomura. Cloud and Sephi both share their moment of banter, giving the idea that the reason Sephiroth's even here is it's not the true Sephiroth, but Cloud's mental image of the man bored out of his self-loathing. Mickey for some reason tries to keep us out of this fight despite the straights, which is dumb considering the talk they just had, and Mickey reneges on that anyways when he sees their resolve to help all of their friends. With regards to the greater franchise, it has been proposed that Mickey's actions here were part of a test of character for Sora, that the latter game's actions in denying Sora's mark of mastery, that he had more than earned, was more because the test was merely a formality for giving Riku his. And through deed and action, Sora had long earned his already as Mickey's unwitting apprentice. Personally, that doesn't ring true and I don't feel works, mainly because of, well, Sora's character reset to be more focused in this entry, making it so that journey to master long before the test feels less prevalent. Where had it continued on from his arc in the first game, that would have felt more to be the case. Yeah, he's not going to be a jerk and ignore someone in need, but it mostly is back to him only caring about them and less a showcase that he understands what's a priority. His decision to jump in here more feels like it's because the threat is right here, not because he knows to put others before his own desires and think in the long term. And worse, amidst all of this, Xemnas entered Anson's lab, put in a secret code, and descended into a secret stairwell, all so as to gaze at the discarded remains of a woman's armor.
It has been far too long, friend.
It's been far too long. Cutscenes added in Final Mix to tease at a greater arc that's badly handled. Yes, I know it's intended to hurt emotionally those that have played Birth by Sleep. It still doesn't really have a place here. This is followed immediately after by a clip that, quite frankly, doesn't have any purpose being here. Why? It's from 358 over 2 days. Or at least I think it's supposed to be, as it features 2 of the organization members we killed in Chain of Memories, taking place at a time before the events of that game, before they even took over Castle Oblivion. But there is no bridging context to why it's here, as Xemnas is not in this scene at all, thus it couldn't be flashing back on it himself. All it acts as is a tease to both the events of Birth by Sleep, the next game released in the franchise, and also the secret bosses of this game. But again, it's something added to 2's Final Mix that doesn't make any sense for it to be here. You don't do that! Whatever, we encountered Demyx again amidst all the chaos and carnage. For as a rock-oriented bard, he wants to join in on the action. As I said, for me, he's not much of a challenge. Then we have a fake out about Goofy being injured, but as we make for the main battle, he is completely fine. Waste of time. The Bow of 1,000 Heartless leaves you alone, so you couldn't use drive forms, in particular Wisdom, to get through it in the original game. In Final Mix, however, you've got Limit Form and all its limit breaks, and you can take your time spamming those and working to reset your gauge to just spam leveling it up. After all. Then we get a good long look at Xemnas, with Mickey being the one to connect the last obvious dots and that he is Xehanort's nobody, except he's not really, and he's calling the shots on all of this nonsense. But Xemnas being here? As Axel then Sykes explains as Sora begs them to tell him what happened to Kairi, he got what he wanted. The nobodies are collecting all of the hearts freed from the slain Heartless into their own artificial Kingdom Hearts after all.
The rage of the Keyblade releases those hearts. They gather in darkness, masterless and free, until they weave together to make Kingdom Hearts. And when that time comes, we can truly, finally exist.
Maleficent helps us get away. Despite being our enemy, the nobodies are screwing with their own plans by their extermination of the Heartless that are her minions, so enemy of the enemy applies in this.
Sora! Donald! Goofy!
Meh, they're fine. Riku opened a rift below them to evac them. Handing over a picture from the simulation and the sea salt ice cream I mentioned earlier for Scrooge, triggering another gate seal on Hollow Bastion, which, in the distance, reveals a silhouette of the game's final region, the world that never was. Same as it ever was. Now, unlike the original game, each of the worlds we visit has a part 2 to them to conclude each's story. In the original, it was almost always just a one and done, bar the Coliseum, Traverse Town, Hollow Bastion, and the secret boss fights. This time, though, everybody gets a minor extension as everybody is now being assaulted by nobodies on top of Heartless, as the nobodies are after the hearts the Heartless have. Fortunately, story extensions here are, all things considered, pretty short and just help us out for the sake of leveling. So first stop on the second lap of the Grand Tour is where we started, the Land of Dragons, with Mulan continuing to be more comfortable in being herself, as the Emperor has worries of a spy, an organization member, threatening the stability of his kingdom. This leads us to more Heartless fights, the game not so subtly giving away that this is Riku due to his Keyblade being on display. Our first encounter with the one-eyed sniper Xigbar. Wow, that explains why he is such a terrible shot. You need depth perception to fire a ranged weapon with any accuracy. Yes, I know he lost his eye to terror in Birth by Sleep. And an engagement with a giant Heartless dragon. Holy crap, something awesome is happening, as we literally ride the wind to perch ourselves on it and cut it down from the sky. This also bears the first seeds of Sora figuring out that Riku's the guy who gave them the gifts and has been helping us by masquerading as an organization member. The Mulan story ends a happy one, and one divergent from the movie's canon, with her being offered the chance to join the Emperor's service as his guard, all so she can get a chance to know Shang better. We then hit up Beast's palace as he's planning a special night with Belle. Not like that! Only for Xaldin to crash the party and ruin it, enraging the Beast as he steals the cursed man's rose. Suffice it to say, he's not happy at anyone, least of all himself after he yells at Belle.
I'll always be a beast, so I should live like a beast, with no one alone.
We are then conscripted to help get it back, so he won't be entirely miserable and thinking he's undeserving of love. And why is Xaldin so obsessed with doing this?
When Kingdom Hearts is ours, we can exist fully and completely.
Dude, just exist right now. Doing what you want? That's existing. You say you don't really feel? Well, desires are brought about by feelings. You only remain a shadow of another person if you let yourself be. Otherwise, if you want to really be complete, then go slaughter the Heartless and find your true heart so you can become your true self again, instead of following a loony that's preventing you from getting that exact thing. We kick his ass, thus defeating the second organization member of this game, and Beast moves closer to actualizing the conditions that'll free him from his curse. Over in Hell, Hades opens up his Coliseum, having spent the interim time mind-screwing Auron so heavily that he is fueled up to be a demigod-slaying machine. Oh please, the only thing that beats Hercules in battle is Gilgamesh, Arthur Pendragon, and Counter Guardian Emiya. We inform Herc of this after seeing it, with Herc agreeing to stall the match until we can get it back and free Auron from his enthralled state, which doesn't take us long at all. What's in the totem? Well, a representation of Auron's heart, and the anguish he went through as part of the Final Fantasy X timeline. How the Final Fantasy game's own stories factor into how everything goes down as part of Kingdom Hearts is such a headache to try and reason out that I'm not even going to try, considering every one of 10's main party is in these games, with exception to Lulu and Kimari at this point.
Hi, Auron. This belongs to you.
Sora, Donald, Goofy.
What happened to our mutual agreement?
Maybe you didn't hear me. This is my story, and you're not part of it.
Again, burned! And Hades is not happy. To be fair, I agree with him. Bar forcing Orin to do the fighting with the Mind Screw so he'd be in a battle mentality, he otherwise has played by the rules and not run a con game to get his way. That, however, ends now, with him dropping Meg back into hell. Herc goes to save her a la the events of the movie, while we deal with Hades. Herc gets his full godhood, Hades has his ass handed to him, and Orin can go back to living his afterlife however he wants.
Maybe it's time I shaped my own story.
I'm kidding. Thank you, Sora, Donald, Goofy.
The return to Port Royal finds the cursed Aztec treasure stolen by Luxord, the gambling organization member we had not interacted with before, in a scheme to spread the curse once more in order to make the victims into organization servants.
Zora, some assistance?
That's Sora, Donald, and Goofy.
Holding their humanity hostage. Jack for some reason ends up cursed by it again, facilitating our return team up with him, and a journey to a few new regions on the map in order to reclaim it and the coins Luxord steals from it. Ultimately all landing us back in Port Royal's main port to battle a Heartless, who keeps devouring the coins in order to make itself immortal, which we then have to beat out of it in order to actually defeat it. I'm curious how many of the staff at Toei might have played this stage and taken inspiration from it, as that's basically how you defeat the monster antagonists of Kamen Rider O's. Doing this, however, is a pain, as it's not just a matter of beating the coins out of it, as it can beat the coins out of us, and if we return all the coins to the chest, it can just suck them all back into itself again. It basically just delays the war of attrition on its health bars. This is the normal progress of a boss battle, but the invincibility frames it's under are just so exhausting to get past. As I said about the combat system earlier though, so many things can be taken down by just sending down the thunder of God on your enemies, and this is one such case where spamming thunder will help make it lose coins. This ends our adventures with Captain Jack, with him trying to steal the Keyblade as a reward for his services. It does not go well for him. Agrabah reveals the shop peddler used Jafar's lamp to make himself rich, by proxy releasing the enemy of all who live in the desert. Dealing with him is the only thing we do here, first chasing him down only to learn we chased a bunch of illusions, all while he's back at the palace where he tries to force Jasmine into marrying him, resulting in a battle in the sky on a magic carpet ride. Over in Halloween, the Mad Dr. Finkelstein puts his finishing touches on a new mechanical creation, which stalks off on its own to ruin Christmas. Once again, Christmas has it coming since it keeps encroaching on the time of year that is clearly supposed to be isolated off for Halloween. Jack Skellington, however, finds the sabotage, a theft of presents, and gets us on the trail of the saboteur.
Alright, Sora, Donald, Goofy. We're off!
We have a brief subversion of expectations in the trio of Shock, Lock, and Barrel invading Santa's factory, making the cast initially think they are responsible. Then it's presumed the Heartless are the ones doing so, as they are then found with the presents on them and are smashing them up, only for the creation to be found to be the one responsible when the crew uses Santa's factory to set up a trap for it, and it shows up. Why did the experiment do this? Again, Christmas keeps encroaching on Halloween. I worked retail for a few years. Do you have any idea how early we were setting out Christmas trees? No, it's because it lacked a heart, and thought the gifts you give others with purpose was close enough. Didn't Finkelstein try to make an artificial heart in Kingdom Hearts 1? The Pride Lands in turn are haunted by the ghosts of Scar, which is preventing Simba in doing his duties as the new King of Pride Rock and getting the Pride Lands back in order. We first fight the hyenas to see if they have an idea of what's going on, but they don't, only for Scar's ghost to show up then and there. And why is it around? Well, it's a manifestation of Simba's own self-doubt, brought about due to the Heartless that possessed Scar in the final battle, sticking around to using his image as a puppet. At least that's my take and I'm sticking to it, unless they're trying to pull the same thing that they're doing with Sephiroth for Cloud. Well, at least it explains why such malevolence eventually coalesces into summoning Mammoth Graveyard in attack mode. Actually, a running theory about this thing is it's the reanimated corpse of the mammoth skeleton you see within Pride Rock during the boss battle with Scar. Would make sense. Though this thing is once more a pain to deal with simply by its sheer size, as if you want to do any damage to it, well, this game seems to like enemies you have to climb up to kick the ass of. The Hydra in Olympus, the Heartless Dragon with Mulan, technically Jafar as you climb him with the magic carpet, and now Wall you're stuck as a lion, and it can only be climbed once you're debilitated on the ground. I seriously got nightmarish flashbacks to fighting the admin toys in Long Gui in Final Fantasy XIII here. That was not a pleasant experience to end up revisiting, even if this thing was nowhere near as bad as that. In fact, I'd call it the opposite of that encounter as, despite how annoying it could be to climb, it still felt fair. With this, Simba's got his groove back and sets out to fix the Bridelands, likely by turning the monarchy into a democracy so he doesn't need to do as much. With that all done, we swing back to Hollow Bastion, only to find the defense grid is on the fritz and Ansem's computer is bio-emerging cyber-heartless from within its systems thanks to the MCP and Sark enacting a plan of Xemnas', requiring us to head back in and go with Tron to beat it, while the others get ready a program specially made to take it down.
Code word! Dirtbag! Ow!
That MCP sure doesn't know when to quit, does it?
Well, Xemnas snapped. This is what happens when you automate copyright content ID. That or you give NetNavi's dark chips. This is the section of the game where you gain access to the Solar Sailor, which as I said far earlier is the best region for leveling up the drive forms you've gotten up until now, which you have the freedom to do after confronting Sark and the MCP, which is turned into a complete cakewalk by Tron's Limit Break. Seriously, I can just spam that in the battle and need nothing else to win. It's that overpowered.
Tron, don't you understand? We don't need users. We've advanced. They're superfluous. Be a part of me, and together the world will be ours to control.
I know this level is based on a movie from 1982, but wow is that cliched. What, did the MCP take advice from Venjix or something?
Sark, all my functions are now yours. Begin the download now.
Holy crap, this is Power Rangers RPM. But you know what that means.
And that was his last mistake.
I just love how sadistic that scene is. Seriously, I just keep seeing bits and pieces of this sect where Tokusatsu later seems to make nods to it, including Sora and Tron using the delete program on the MCP. Really, this entire battle is a cakewalk due to Tron's skills, taking down the rampaging programs and leaving Tron in charge of the place. Though considering their differing color palettes, there might be some redecorating in the future. But in the end, it's always a tale of red versus blue.
Sora, Donald, Goofy.
With this, we've cleared the final section of Hollow Bastion, Tron using the system now to restore the city to its proper prominence from before Xehanort screwed it up, returning it from being a Hollow Bastion back into the Radiant Garden. I think you're going to need to plant a lot more flowers for that. I take the time to wrap up the 100-acre woods at this point, which is again just a bunch of mini-games, as it adds padding to getting to a point and world I've been dreading and avoiding. Heading back to Atlantica. Yes, it's back, and it is the second most infamous level in this game. And unlike Twilight Town where the general consensus, as I've been told it, is it just needed to be shorter, no, I have not heard of a single person who's ever liked Atlantica. As the entire stage, reenacting the original Little Mermaid film, is entirely a rhythm-based musical with unforgiving responses that are all tied to QuickTime events and presses that get progressively more difficult to pull off. As I have said before on numerous occasions, I fucking hate QuickTime events as I lack the motor controls to be able to pull them off without putting too much stress on my hands to even keep playing afterwards. Trying to react fast enough to even hit these buttons in the windows they wanted for me was fucking impossible. It got so bad I finally just gave up and let Matt do it. He actually helped me out with a few of these things. We double-teamed the gummy stages for fun, an example, though I still did everything major. And all of this, well, it's worse for me as not only have I already established that I do not like musicals at all, I actually hate The Little Mermaid in specific. Its songs are aggravating, the moral dumb, Ariel's ridiculously myopic and gives up everything for a guy she barely knows. it's always grated on me. And why is it even here like this? People hated the original Atlantica, and they already had Port Royal to cover them on a sea/aquatic based enemy region. There was no reason to come back here and turn it into a musical game. Kingdom Hearts 2 for the most part avoids every single flawed aspect of the original game beyond the convoluted nature of its plot, with the only reason I have to add on a for the most part is solely, and I do mean solely, because of how awful this stage is. And it's disappointing as, unlike later Square games where they never seem to learn the goddamn lesson about what people hated, it otherwise seemed as if they did try and listen to critical feedback from the first one this time when they decided to turn it into a franchise. And if I might echo a line of Stark from a fellow internet reviewer, Ursula, we don't care about your poopsies! And you can't skip it. At least if you want to actually be able to move on with this game or make the ultimate weapon. It is fucking mandatory, and a waste of our time as a result. Seriously, this place can have its oceans drained into Hades' domain for all I care. If I ever get around to playing another Kingdom Hearts game for the show, then Atlantica better not be somewhere I have to visit, cause otherwise I'm going to find a way to burn it down. Possibly with lemons. At least with that done, we can finally move into the endgame with one final visit to Twilight Town and a trip back to Ansem's lab to figure out the mystery of the photograph. And a few more oddities that happen thanks to VR data conversion being a thing. Oh, reminder, before you head into it, the ultimate weapon synthesis recipe is right next door. But anyways, with Ansem's lab, yeah, Ansem and Riku figured out a way to get to the world that never was, same as it ever was. Through the use of his equipment here and his VR conversion tech managing to make a bridge to a place that technically both exists and yet does not exist at the same time. Maybe we should call it Schrödinger. I'm presuming he did this from back analysis of the tears into the system the organization was opening in an attempt to get Roxas back at the beginning of the game. Within the gates, we end up finding Axel, who helps us out against the nobodies in order to let us get past, admitting everything he'd done this game was because, well, as fake a person that this game keeps insisting the nobodies are, which is completely wrong about, the feelings he has for Roxas were completely real. Thus, he kidnapped Kairi out of, I presume, either jealousy or for use as a bargaining chip against Sora, so he'd let Roxas out of himself. And Roxas is too much like Sora, that Sora being himself is too strong a reminder for Axel to have gone through with it.
Go. Find Kairi. Sorry for what I did to her.
Farewell, you jerk, with an echo of a heart made of gold. We'll be seeing you when Leo wakes up because you were too much of a breakout character to not bring back. So yeah, we finally reached the final stage of the game. The world that never was.
Same as it ever was, 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 same as it ever was. Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing underground.
And here we find Roxas?
Sora! Donald! Goofy!
Okay, now that doesn't make a lick of sense. Isn't he in Sora right now, or is this another clone? I actually had to look this up, and apparently because of Roxas's feelings for Axel in turn, Axel's death was the final straw for him waking up and splintering himself from Sora again. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but the rationale I'm running with is because Roxas was never actually killed in their refusion, he remained as a separate sentience in Sora and never actually refused with him fully, just pulling himself apart with the right circumstances, and that's what the other organization members were trying to do during the rest of the game, despite Roxas betraying them due to the same morals Sora possesses in the first place, sort of had no impetus to rejoin them. And obviously all that meaningful narrative symbolism would mean something if it weren't the fandom trying to pull this out of their ass to explain something the game never bothers to. We really shouldn't need to bend over backwards to figure out such crap from indistinct details, lore primers that otherwise don't have much to do with the story we're being told, and supplementary material released later that retcons in an explanation. Whatever. Let Sora face down his persona.
I am a shadow, the true self. I'll crush everything that bores me, starting with you.
And if you think I'm just being obstinate about this wasn't even a fight in the original version of the game. All they got was a cutscene that meant even less than this the first time around. Final Mix added it because so many people were unsatisfied with how it went down. But the real reason why they were is because there isn't a good reason why Roxas would show up out of nowhere as a separate entity again, with no sign that the two had ever become separated. Even the ending where it's revealed that this was all a mental battle doesn't work, because the way they segued into it showcased it all starting in the real world with the Roxas separate to Sora. To set up the entire fight, they deliberately lied to the audience with no out about distorted perceptions, faking us out on it that the other Square games have done. Case in point, half the times Titus talks with Bahamut in Final Fantasy X, there's a flash in reality that then flips things to a distorted dreamscape for the discussion. They could have easily done that and yet made us think it was actually happening, only for that to end up a disjointed lie.
You make a good other.
I miss Persona and Doc Hack right now, because the point they kept missing is, he's not an other.
You are me.
Because we've had this fight with Roxas, at random we can now obtain Final Form. Chances to get it increased by us also getting the Keyblade to become one. Once that's done, we can walk through the rest of the city, and find Organization 13's floating castle in the sky. Sadly, Disney only distributes Studio Ghibli movies, as it'd be funny if this ended up being Laputa. Over with Kairi, she finally gets a break with Naminé breaking her out of prison on the ship. Before we board the castle though, I take a detour to Twilight Town to unlock Final Form as, well, come on, it's the final stage. It makes the most sense for the form that grows stronger fighting nobodies to be available to fight nobodies. Now, inside we find Kairi's being backed up by Riku, who she recognizes straight up, with the alliance of her and one resembling their enemy throwing Sora momentarily for a loop. But Sora botching his initiative roll has Riku pass Kairi her own Keyblade. Why the hell couldn't she have gotten that earlier? So the Princess of Heart finally gains the capability to defend her own.
You know Sora's completely hopeless without us.
That would be the case if they didn't keep resetting his character. Since we're on a tangent for cutaway scenes anyways, Mickey finally finds Ansem, who reveals he's used his research to construct a device to counter the artificial Kingdom Hearts, intending to seal it within its own virtual world cut off from both sides. I presume so it can then be dismantled to restore everyone that's been consumed by Heartless, otherwise that's kind of a lot of unrestored victims there, Ansem, which makes for a pretty bad attempt at personal redemption for instigating all of this. And also him explaining what the hell's up with Riku looking like Terranort. It's a bass-ackward way of dealing with it, especially since the game has put a big mystery around all of it, which, like I keep saying, is just stupid drama that keeps him from actually apologizing and acknowledging that he did wrong to those he most wronged and burned bridges with. If Sora were not so forgiving a person, well, it wouldn't be enough. But before we get to that, we have a face-off with Xigbar and his gun blades, with which he seems to be a terrible shot, and only seems to strike us because a lot of them seem to be homing ammo-based. And you're not going to believe this, but the way I beat Xigbar, deflecting his own shots back at him so he died by them, meaning I had better accuracy deflecting them than he had shooting them. I have so many jokes.
I lost. Me.
Shot to the heart, and you're too late, darling. You give love a bad name.
Judgment!
It's like rain on your wedding day.
So yeah, it's finally time for the trio's long-held-off reunion. Sora and Kairi hugging. Kiss, damn it! And for some reason, Sora not figuring out the obvious, even though he figured it out earlier in the game because Sora is not this dense.
I was starting to worry you guys weren't ever gonna catch on.
You have intentionally been hiding yourself and not talked to them about this, and Sora the only ones that knew to secrecy, so you could be a trolling jackass. A shame you got stuck looking like Terra Xehanort or not, it doesn't excuse you from being a jerk. Ansem begins his plans to encode the Artificial Kingdom as data, while we take care of Luxord and Cyax. Why is the boss fight here, and why are they formatted like this? Yeah, it's the end of the game and we have antagonists left over for a boss rush, but shouldn't this be a final gambit of walled-off barriers that we have to beat these guys to get past? Not, oh, we gotta take a side trip to go fight them in their own cordoned-off rooms kind of deal? Granted, Luxord's the most difficult of the two in my opinion. While it can certainly take longer to fight Syx due to the mechanics of his fight locking him in invincibility states due to him being a berserker, Luxord actively debilitates us due to his specialty being gambling abilities that turns us into dice and playing cards. I've been told the Syx fight is the harder of the two, but surprisingly, I didn't have much problem with it. I don't know why. But of course, all of these people keep calling him Roxas, with once more being this point that Sora learns what the audience did literally 40 hours ago, about the nature of his own nobody that should have shown up in exposition long before this. And it is just bad storying all around that not even Axel, who had his full goal being to get Roxas back, to not tell him that. Hell, Sora learning this isn't even used to focus on his reaction to it. It's instead used as part of Riku's own pathos about what caused him to go full Xehanort. So he's once again stealing the story of the protagonist with all of this. And what's more lavishing than what the game should have been about is Sora dealing with the memories and emotions of his other half that has otherwise been completely ignored.
Ridiculous. And nobody cannot feel anything.
This game and every encounter with the organization members have clearly shown that this is not the case. You're a very bad scientist if what you state to be empirical fact is disproven simply by observation of your subject.
Maybe I didn't need to fight him after all.
Clearly. Though yeah, I think I am on the right track with Ansem being a bad researcher, as his device, which clearly has to be based on research meant to analyze what it means to have a heart, cannot contain the power of hearts that has been trapped within the artificial Kingdom Hearts, with Xemnas mocking him for his failure, and that he's going to do the job right and using it to create a whole new world. Oh joy, we're doing this cliché again. How many Japanese originating series have their villains ultimately break down to, I'll remake the world in my image the way I want it to be? Crap. It's gotten old.
I thought you'd praise me, but all you ever do is hold me back.
I'd call him a sociopath with no emotions, but then again, that's what nobodies were supposed to be in the first place, right?
You have surpassed nothing. Only proved how little we both know. I'm afraid that any world you try to create, any world of yours, would be an empire of ignorance.
Okay, I want to save that line for future snark fodder. So yeah, his device overloads, blowing up the artificial Kingdom Hearts, which manages to release enough light to return Riku to normal, and rightly screw over Xemnas' plans. He retreats like a bitch, leaving Mal and Peter claim control of the Heartless, as part of a greater scheme of theirs in liking this castle and wanting to take it for themselves. Just with a darker paint job. And thus they cover our backs from the greater nobody forces to continue the confrontation.
Warriors of the Keyblade, go forth and bring me more hearts.
No! The entire rest of this conversation is nothing but pretentious posturing. Xemnas arguing answers to ridiculously obvious questions that shows he really doesn't have any leg to stand his argument on, thus making me baffled he even put together this organization in the first place if this is all his recruitment speech for people to do what he wants is. So we fight, and it's a curb stomp, and by losing, he decides to fuse with the remnants of Kingdom Hearts for the final boss battle.
You can no more be complete without me than I without you. Heed me, Kingdom Hearts. Lend me your power so that we may be complete.
Or, you know, you can go find Xehanort's heart, if he even has one anymore. This thus gives us our chance to wrap up anything that we might have left to level up for the final confrontation, completing final form, running through the Coliseum, getting all the reagents we're missing, and lastly clearing the Cavern of Remembrance, a new final mix area with the last of the crown puzzle pieces that's the greatest challenge due to having the strongest Heartless and nobodies in it. That is just great for grinding once you complete all the region puzzles. The reward at the end being another hidden room of Ansems with battle simulations of the various organization members for fighting them again. These only become complete after you clear all the absent silhouettes and defeated Xemnas once. Of course, we also have the expected uber boss battles with Sephiroth, and Sephiroth here is a pain different from the one presented the first time around. Mainly because of his signature move in this fight being an attack that, if you don't use a reaction command to counter it, sends you to 1 health without a real chance to recover between it and the next strike. You just need to either learn to time your heals really damn well, or once more break your thumbs with how obnoxious it is to hit triangle in the Western release of Kingdom Hearts because they failed to reassign the button commands to conform to the West's insistence of flipping circle and X on the PlayStation. Because of that, even with the ultimate weapon, I can't hit him hard enough to really be able to keep up. Admittedly, I first challenged him when I was at level 77, when the recommended range is 80 to 85. But because of that one reducing to health technique, it doesn't really matter what level you challenge him at. You are just as likely at any level to be overwhelmed by him. And thanks to Final Mix, he's not even the strongest enemy here. The data replicas of the organization members are up there as well, just without the instant-death win button. But at least Sephiroth is supposed to be that ridiculously hard to beat anyways, so I'm not calling foul on the game for it. I'm just bitching on the awfulness of the reaction command system again, where it's unfairly more difficult to implement in the Western release due to the button reassignments.
Defeating me is meaningless. You know that more than anyone, Cloud. No matter how many times I fall, your darkness keeps calling me back. You'll never let go of your past.
Rather, the sales numbers won't let him.
He doesn't have to. He just needs someone to surround him with light.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Stop!
Huh?
So what's the hardest enemy this time? Well, it's the Lingering Will, the Keyblade armor, explained in Birth by Sleep, of the Keyblade warrior Terra, the man whose body Xehanort stole to then create Xemnas and Xehanort's Heartless down the line, animated by what remnants of Terra's will exist. I'd figured that it'd make more sense for this to be Terra's own nubbity split from the whole Xehanort possession thing, since Terranort, Terra possessed by Xehanort's essence, would have resulted in 4 being split when their hearts were taken out, with this then the only one with Terra control, since there is a 3rd Xehanort out there. Which they then explain as Xehanort from the past who came to the future as a backup plan, and no, nothing good comes of Square Enix games mucking up their plots with time travel. That doesn't count. Regardless, this fight is the bane of my existence. It's seriously that hard. I mean, I struggled enough with Sephiroth due to that stupid reaction command issue, but Lingering Will is at least more fair in my opinion in that regard, as he's just that much more powerful and has higher health than you, so you need to be careful with each move you make to be able to counter its sheer undeniable power. I eventually found a strategy online that seems to work against it, and that by launching it with Donald's Comet Limit after reducing your attack combos as low as you can air bash the thing to death. But that's ridiculously obscure, and requires you to not only find rare items and make them, but intentionally remove every tactical advantage you have to even do it. So while it might seem like a cheap way to pull it off, you can still easily die from making the attempt as you over-specialize yourself. With that, it's time for the true final battle with Xemnas, which is a stage into and of itself as Xemnas has transformed himself into a... Wait a second. That's Galacticmon from Digimon World 3! What the hell? Yeah, your final task before the final task is to dismember this thing's body by blowing up its cannons, before fighting Xemnas, who is wearing Xehanort's Keyblade armor at its core. Twice. The second time because the Nobody Dragon, once shed of all these weapons, takes off on its own, with Riku and Sora chasing it down themselves until they can slam right on back in its head to continue the fight. To be honest, I think they overdid this one as there's, 7 different stages to fighting Xemnas in this game? It feels like the Lord of the Rings Return of the King of boss fights with it being padded out so much.
I will not allow it to end this way. Not yet. If light and darkness are eternal, then surely we nothings must be the same. Eternal.
Clearly, since you've made us go through how many stages of all this now? At least this one is the final exchange, with Sora and Riku double-teaming him and deflecting all of his attacks, ending up with them opening the lock in his sealed, well, not heart, killing him and ending the threat of the Nobodies and Kingdom Hearts. Well, until the true Xehanort puts himself back together, since both his Heartless and Nobody have been defeated, which of course leads into more sequels. This franchise is just never going to end, is it? At least with him done, Sora and Riku can finally share something more tangible of a reconciliation moment between them, allowing both of them to admit that they're just jealous of what the other has that's good about them, and they need to get over that. Though, from what I've been told about the sequels past this, that's something which has yet to happen, as Riku keeps getting all the crap that Sora's done the work to earn. Whatever, happy ending for the interim, roll credits, and give us the secret ending sequel bag. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a good game at the end of the day. I enjoyed the Disney movie recreations, and of course the combat with the gummy missions, but less so the stupid main story. But as I'm told, that's again the divide on this one. Though as dispassionate as I am about this franchise, I will certainly say this in its favor. Kingdom Hearts 2, much like the entries on my favorite games list, which is often populated by sequels, is exactly how you're supposed to do a video game sequel. You figure out what didn't work, brainstorm ways to fix it, and implement those changes without throwing out what people liked about the original. Even if you mess up in a new way, as a result that people won't follow you as harshly on, as you acknowledge the earlier criticism to not repeat them. Really, while players of it all agree it's good, there's two divisive camps on why that is. Either the strength of the interim scenarios of the Disney worlds is what's good about it, or they loved what was teased about the organization and hated that the main story wasn't given the main amount of focus as opposed to all the Disney worlds, which took away from actually focusing on it for the proper time to flesh it out. Both of these are absolutely true. It's possible I would have liked the main story of it all better had it actually been given the time paid attention to it that it more than should have, and not needed at all the sequels to actually explain what the hell is happening in its plot in just this game in its isolation. My rant earlier about Twilight Town was all about agreeing with that position. And that is all once more informed with how Daisuke Watanabe is good at smaller scenarios and sucks at larger interconnected stories, as even attention is not paid to both as it should have been. For as it is, I didn't care at all about the organization in this game. Hell, I cared more about them in Read Chain of Memories than I did here. I didn't care about Axel. I found Riku hiding from his friends and trolling them to be infuriating instead of actual drama. I felt Sora went backwards from who he was depicted as previously. Roxas felt pointless, and the annoyed Kairi ended up a damsel being shoveled place to place before she finally got a weapon to defend herself, though I am glad she did get it. To say nothing of Mickey not informing those his allies about what's going on. It feels like chess piece storytelling in that instead of everything being up front and then exploring the scenario, you give it to us in uneven breadcrumbs as you move the pawns about until what's left is just dumped on at the end. And all that's left is the recreation of scenarios that, if I honestly wanted to see them played out, I'd go out and buy the movies to watch them. So that's not much to invest me in this whole enterprise either. Well, I'm told that this is the make it or break it one of the franchise with regards of you play this one to become a fan. Well, it's strange, but I found the storytelling of the original game and aspects of Chain of Memories far better than this one overall. They just have worse gameplay than Kingdom Hearts 2 does. As it is, well, I'm left in the position I started this all in. I still feel as if I am indifferent overall to this franchise at the end of the day. It is astounding so many other Square Enix sequels completely failed at this. And hey, those of you looking forward to Kingdom Hearts 3, I hope it's good. I mean that with sincerity. You've been waiting over a decade for it. So with any luck, Nomura didn't screw it over as well, like he has so many projects he has no business being on. With that, I'm pretty much done with Kingdom Hearts, so I'm going to be working on something that I rather am more passionate about. I'm Shinta. I'll see you all next time.